Today I wanted to talk a little bit about IRs, or impulse responses, and the reason for that is recently I've been experimenting and I've found that they made way bigger of a difference than I ever gave them credit for. All of the examples that you're going to hear in the EQ graphs that you're going to see were recorded with this. This is the Ampero Hotone Mini, or the Hotone Ampero Mini, sorry. It's a wonderful small digital modeler that's very, very cost effective, and we're going to look at how you can really improve the sounds you get out of either this or your own digital modeler with the use of aftermarket IRs. So first of all, if you aren't familiar with what an impulse response is, or an IR, they are basically snapshots of a real amp and cabinet recorded in a studio. So they give you the big kind of complaint sometimes about modeling technology is that you can't get the amp in a room feel because they are recreating, obviously, a mic'd guitar cabinet. So you're hearing what you hear from a mic'd guitar amp or a mic'd cabinet rather than the thing. Now, if you're a working professional like myself, that can actually be a huge plus, because one of the things that swayed me towards digital modeling was actually having a sound and being able to recreate it no matter what stage I'm on, no matter what room I'm in. And it also just makes recording at home, late at night when my wife is sleeping, very, very easy and a realistic thing to do rather than, having to crank an actual tube amp. So with these impulse responses, all of the digital modelers you would buy, whether you're using the Helix stuff, I was a long time HX Stomp user. That was the first thing that got me into digital modeling. Whether you're using Quad Cortex, Axe FX, Kemper, all of these things, there will be some built-in IRs to the devices, and they are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. The one in the Ampero is fantastic as well. It does its job, and it lets you kind of work through basically, a lot of them have features where you can, virtually move the mic placement or whatever to get the sound that you're going for. And then what an impulse response is it's a fixed one. So the packs that tend to be sold are recorded by professional audio engineers in professional studios with, a good example of the amp, but you can add low cuts and high cuts in most of them, and you can kind of tweak them, but in general, the flexibility that you get from a purchased IR is a lot lower than what you get out of the box. And now that was probably what always swayed me away from using them, was the belief that, I get more flexibility from the one that's built in. But recently, I just got curious and I saw that York Audio IRs were having some sales on some of their stuff. So I picked up the Deluxe Reverb IR because I tend to use, I mostly use clean sounds, and then if I get distortion, I'm going to pull it from a pedal rather than from the amp. And so I went and I bought the Deluxe Reverb because that's an amp that I know very, very well. For those of you who, tour and do this, you'll be very familiar with when you get, backline, the most common thing that you end up with is either a Deluxe Reverb, a Princeton Reverb, or a Twin Reverb. So I bought the Deluxe because it's an amp that I know really, really well. And again, the thing that's fantastic about these is that similar to the ones that you get built in, you do get, you can get mic combinations, they'll have various ones where they've moved the mics around to get different sounds. But the big thing for me is that on the Hotone Ampero in particular, you can only use one microphone at a time. So the fact that this lets me get two, the IRs that you're going to be hearing later were recorded with a 57 and a Royer 121. And those are absolutely fantastic microphones. And actually, I was joking with one of my friends that the Royer mic in real life costs about as much as my entire rig. So it's nice to be able to steal that. And again, the benefit of getting the IR over the stock cab is that you are getting something that was captured by professionals in a studio. And not to say, again, that you can't dial in incredible sounds with just the stock stuff that's in your modeler. The learning curve for doing this is obviously much, much lower because you can just go in and you can tweak, or you can just go in, set it, and it's already been tweaked and set up by audio professionals, and it's been a good sound. So that's a huge benefit you get from IRs. And again, they are actually pretty cheap. I think I spent $14 on this Deluxe Reverb one, and I also did buy the Princeton Reverb model, which you will hear in a couple minutes, and that was, I think, $10. So you can get really, really good results for really cheap, and it's something that's just kind of cool to mess around with, because oftentimes, especially as a professional musician, if I want to change anything about my rig or my gear, it costs a lot of money because I'm buying expensive professional tools. These are some of the cheapest professional tools that you can buy. So First, to just kind of see the difference, I'm going to show you what was, until recently, my kind of main patch of the last 4 months. And what this was basically was, it was a Fender Tweed Champ going into a Fender Tweed cabinet. And this is just the stock IR from the Hotone. And it is basically, I believe, again, it's a Tweed Champ going into a Tweed speaker, a 1x8, going into a Royer 121. So this is what that would sound like, versus the Deluxe Reverb IR from York Audio is the amp that I was using, or the cabinet that I used beside it. So the first take is the Tweed, the second take is the Deluxe Reverb cabinet, and just see if you can hear what a big difference there is. So when I was first getting into digital modeling, I saw everybody posting about, aftermarket IRs and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, frankly, it was a little bit of snake oil, because I went, well, I have all these mics in my unit. I can tweak all of these things. But again, when I listened back to that, I was shocked at how much more kind of clarity and air there was in that one. And now this could be due to a couple different factors. Again, I use the Ampero Mini, which is kind of a truncated version of the Ampero line, and there's no way, and again, the biggest reason that I do that is actually for size. I just want something that's small, I want something that has a tuner, and I want something that sounds great. And it ticked all of those boxes, but when I loaded in those IRs, you just get so much more air. And I think a big part of that might be the fact that there's 2 microphones, but the other big part of that is that, again, professional audio engineers did this. I have a lot of audio engineering skills as an independent musician. You kind of have to figure out and work on all this stuff. So again, I can get great usable sounds out of these units, but leaning that over to a more professional, and sorry if you hear my cat in the background, he's fine, he just likes to yell. But going through and doing that, we get kind of someone who's a total professional doing sounds how they would want it to be. Now, I got kind of curious when I was messing around with this, and I decided to pick up the Princeton reverb. So here, I'm going to play you another example where basically the first sound is a Princeton model in the Hotone going into the Princeton reverb cabinet from York IR, or York Audio IRs. And then the second example is the Princeton running into the Deluxe reverb cabinet. And this was another one. They're a lot closer, I would say, than the stock one, versus the... So it's 2 York IRs going back to back, but it's a lot closer in sound than the stock one versus that. But anyways, check this out and let me know in the comments which you prefer. I put this up on my Instagram story and was surprised at some of the responses I hear. But so the first clip you hear is a Princeton into the Princeton IR, and the second one you hear is a Princeton into the Deluxe Reverb IR. So there you have it. There's the huge difference that even just an IR can make. All of the amp settings for both of those tests, whether it was going through the stock IR or the York Audio IR, were exactly the same. I, again, did not really expect that the IRs would play that big of a difference, but they play a huge difference, as you can tell, listening to these. And I'm also curious just to hear your thoughts on what you're hearing down below, if you're willing to indulge me, because I was really surprised by the changes, and I was also surprised hearing what some people thought of them when I shared these different clips on my Instagram story and asked for opinions. So I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below. But yeah, there you have it. IRs make a huge difference in your sound. They're relatively cheap to pick up, and I think if you're into the digital modeling world, you owe it to yourself to check out kind of what's out there. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It truly helps me out more than you could know. If you want to take a guitar lesson with me, there's a link to get in touch with me down in the description. I'd love to work with you on whatever's troubling you on the guitar. If you're looking for a way to support me and the free educational content that I post on this channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon down below. All of my patrons get early access to videos, the documents that I sometimes upload in these videos that are cropped in, you can have them to download and help in your practice. And it's just a wonderful little community of guitar lovers, so I'd love to see you over there. If you're looking for a different way to support me and what I'm up to, you can purchase either my ebooks or my video courses, which are linked down in the description as well. It's a great way to get some more in-depth educational content from me than you can get in a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video. And last but not least, I have new videos coming out every single week, so I hope I'll see you in the next one. And until I do, I'll wish you a wonderful day, and I hope you have some fun playing the guitar. Let me know kind of your experience with IRs down below if you made it this far, and thank you as always for watching.